The HOA dumped snow on my property all winter, so I turned it into a wall blocking their street.
$5,500. That's what the HOA fined me for snow. They dumped on my property for 3 weeks straight. 6:47 a.m. The metallic scrape of plow blades on asphalt jolted me awake. Diesel engines rumbled outside like tanks rolling through suburbia. I pulled back the curtain, expecting to see normal snow removal. Instead, I watched 4 HOA trucks deliberately dump every flake from the entire neighborhood onto my property. Mountain of dirty snow, road salt burning my nostrils, ice chunks the size of bowling balls blocking my driveway completely. The lead driver saw me watching and shrugged like he was doing me a favor. Where else were we supposed to put it? My hands shook, not from cold, but from rage. Sarah was still weak from chemo. The twins were counting on this house. And now these bastards thought they could walk all over us. That's when Cordelia Ashford made her biggest mistake. What happened next turned 3 weeks of snow into the most satisfying revenge of my life. What would you do if someone used your lowest moment against you? Drop your HOA nightmare below. Because what happened next turned 3 weeks of snow dumps into the most satisfying revenge of my life. But first, you need to understand exactly how we got here. Let me paint you the picture. December 2023, Stonefield Manor, Colorado. One of those cookie-cutter developments where every house looks identical and the HOA thinks they run a small country. I just inherited Uncle Pete's corner property. Honestly, it was a godsend. Sarah had just finished her second round of chemo. Medical bills had nearly broken us. Our twins, Emma and Grace, were 16 and worried about everything teenagers worry about, plus whether mom was going to survive. We'd sold our bigger house to pay for treatment. Uncle Pete's place was our fresh start. Now I'm a heavy equipment operator. 25 years of moving dirt teaches you things about leverage and pressure points. I name all my equipment after World War II generals. My main bulldozer is General Patton. That machine's moved more earth than Sherman's army, and it was about to move some hearts and minds, too. Uncle Pete's property sits where the main road meets Stonefield Manor's private street. Here's the kicker. That private street runs 40 feet across my land to connect to the public road. Uncle Pete was nice. Always let neighbors use it without fuss. No legal easement, just a handshake deal from 1987. Every morning at 6 a.m., diesel engines fired up like Reveille. The metallic scrape of plow blades echoed through the valley, followed by that chemical by the road salt mixed with exhaust. Then came the crunch of my boots on packed snow. As I walked out to see what fresh hell awaited. Enter Cordelia Ashford, 62, inherited wealth. Drives a white Mercedes with license plate Queen Bee. Yes, she actually wore pearls to take out garbage. Some people are parodies of themselves. December 15th, I'm drinking coffee when I hear snow plows rumbling. We'd gotten 6 and overnight, but instead of normal removal, I watched 4 HOA trucks dump every flake from the entire neighborhood onto my property. Right where their street meets mine. A mountain of snow, road salt, sand, and whatever else they'd scraped up, blocking my driveway, killing my grass, creating a hazardous mess that would freeze concrete harder than ours. I stepped outside. Cold air hit sharp and clean. Diesel exhaust hung thick, and I could taste metallic road salt on my lips. The lead plow driver looked at me like he was doing me a favor. Where else were we supposed to put it? He shrugged. That's when I knew this was an accident. This was policy. See, legitimate snow removal costs money. The HOA saved $15,000 annually using my property as their dump instead of paying for proper removal. They figured Uncle Pete never complained, so why would I? But Uncle Pete didn't have a wife fighting cancer and twins watching every penny. Uncle Pete didn't know what it felt like choosing between groceries and medical copays. And Uncle Pete definitely wasn't a combat engineer who'd spent 3 tours watching powerful people sacrifice little guys for convenience. I stood in that freezing air, watching my breath steam while 4 trucks finished dumping half the neighborhood's problems on my land. Hydraulic lifts groaned as they raised beds one final time. And I realized something important. These people had no idea who they were messing with. The war was about to begin, and I had all the heavy equipment. But Cordelia's biggest mistake was still coming. It would happen in front of 60 witnesses. 3 days later, the notice appeared under my windshield wiper like a parking ticket. Official HOA letterhead, fancy logo, the works, $500 fine for snow accumulation blocking street access and creating safety hazards. I read it twice. They were literally fining me for snow. They dumped on my property. The fine notice crinkled like autumn leaves as I crushed it in my fist. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked, looking up from breakfast. She was regaining strength, but stress still hit hard. These people just fined us $500 for their snow. The audacity was breathtaking. They'd used my land as their dump, now wanted me to pay for privilege. The notice included a diagram showing proper snow management techniques and reminded me fines doubled if unpaid within 10 days. I drove straight to Cordelia's oversized colonial. Her Mercedes sat in the circular driveway like a chrome monument to entitlement. When she opened the door, she looked at me like I was selling something unwanted. "Can I help you?" Not stepping aside or inviting me in. "Yeah, explain this $500 fine for snow you dumped on my property." Cordelia adjusted her pearls, smiled that patronizing smile. Rich people perfect in finishing school. "Mr. Kavanaugh, the HOA has prescriptive rights to that area from 37 years of continuous use. Your uncle understood the arrangement. Prescriptive rights, fancy legal term, meaning if you use someone's land long enough without permission, you can claim ownership. But here's what most people don't know. The use must be hostile, without owner permission. If you ask permission, and owner says yes, the legal clock resets to zero every time. So, you're saying the HOA owns part of my property? The HOA has established usage rights. Yes, those rights include reasonable maintenance activities. Show me the paperwork. Her smile faltered. "I'm sorry. Legal documents, recorded easement, deed restriction. Show me where it says you can dump snow on my land, then fine me for it. That's proprietary board information. Submit a formal request." Translation. They had squat. Military service teaches you about contracts. Every base has legal agreements for everything. Equipment use, land access, waste disposal. You don't operate heavy machinery on someone's property without ironclad paperwork, because when things go sideways, lawyers circle like vultures. I'm formally requesting all documentation related to any easement, right-way, or usage agreement for my property. You've got 10 days, same as this bogus fine. Cordelia's face reamed. "Mr. Kavanaugh, I don't appreciate your tone. This neighborhood has standards. And your uncle? My uncle's dead. I'm not my uncle. If you don't have legal documentation for using my property, then you're trespassing every time those plows cross my land." She stepped outside, pulling her cashmere coat tighter. "Are you threatening the HOA? I'm asking for proof of your legal right to dump snow on my property." "That's not a threat. That's due diligence." Next morning, my phone buzzed with messages. Cordelia had blasted every homeowner about the uncooperative new resident who threatens neighborhood safety. Subject line: dangerous property owner blocks emergency access. Emergency access. Rich? Considering the only emergency was their budget meeting where they decided my yard looked convenient for dumping problems. But here's where it got interesting. 3 neighbors knocked that afternoon. Not to complain, but to ask questions. Is it true the HOA doesn't have legal rights to your land? Ask Jim Martinez from 2 houses down. That's what I'm trying to find out. Because they've been charging us $200 annually for road maintenance fees on that street if they don't own it. Now we were getting somewhere. Cordelia hadn't just been dumping illegally. She'd been collecting money for maintaining property she didn't control. Diesel fuel still hung in cold air from morning removal. I could hear salt crunching under my boots as I walked back inside. But for the first time since this started, I wasn't just angry. I was seeing opportunity. 25 years of heavy equipment operation teaches you the biggest problems often create the biggest leverage. Cordelia had just handed me a backhoe full of leverage. The question was what to build with it. I spent the weekend shoveling, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to make a point. Every shovelful of their snow went right back where it came from, spread evenly across the HOA street. Monday morning, 6 a.m. sharp. My doorbell rang like a fire alarm. Cordelia stood on my porch with 2 board members, all looking like they'd swallowed something sour. Mr. Kavanaugh, you cannot dump snow on HOA property. We're issuing a $5,000 fine for vandalism and destruction of common areas. 5,000. They'd multiplied the fine by 10 overnight. Interesting, I said, sipping coffee. Which HOA property would that be? The street running through my land. That street's been in continuous use since 1987. By whose permission? Cordelia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She hadn't expected me to keep pushing. Your uncle never objected. My uncle's gone. I am here, and I'm objecting. Show me the easement. A nervous guy in an expensive suit whispered in her ear. She waved him off like a mosquito. Fine. We'll conduct a survey to establish our legal boundaries. Great idea. I'll hire my own surveyor. Make sure we're working with accurate information. I called Morrison Land Surveying that afternoon. Chuck Morrison had done boundary work for half the county's construction projects. His reputation was bulletproof. If Chuck said a line was wrong, banks and courts believed him. How long has that street been there? He asked. Since 1987, according to them, and no recorded easement. That's what I'm figuring out. Chuck's crew showed up 3 days later with enough equipment to map the moon, laser theolites, GPS units, metal detectors hunting original property markers. I watched them work while laser equipment whirred through morning air, sharp spray paint smell filling my nostrils as they marked boundaries. The results were beautiful. Chuck handed me a survey that read like a medical examiner's report for the HOA's case. The street crossed exactly 42 feet onto my property. Not 40, not 45. 42 feet of clear documented trespass, happening for 36 years. Here's the thing, Chuck explained, pointing to the survey. Your uncle owned this free and clear. No easements recorded. No deed restrictions. No rights of way. If he let them use it, that was his choice. But legally, the street trespasses on your property every single day. Property surveys are public record. 20 minutes. $15. Most people never check because they assume someone else did the homework. Bad assumption. That assumption was about to cost the HOA dearly. I hand-delivered survey copies to every house in the development, not to be a jerk, but because people deserve truth about where their road maintenance fees were going. Response was immediate. My phone rang from 7 o'clock p.m. until midnight. Is this survey accurate? Asked Janet Pierce from Oak Street. Chuck Morrison surveyed it. You can verify with the county. So, the HOA has been charging us for maintaining property. They don't own looks that way. And all those snow removal fees also looks that way. By Thursday, Cordelia called an emergency board meeting to address what she called misinformation and property owner harassment. The meeting notice warned about believing unverified claims from disgruntled residents. Unverified claims. That's what she called a licensed surveyor's report. I showed up with my survey, Uncle Pete's original deed, and county records I'd pulled that afternoon. The community center was packed, maybe 150 people in a room designed for 75. The air wire of nervous sweat and burned coffee, tension thick enough to choke on. This neighborhood has functioned smoothly for 36 years, Cordelia announced. We will not allow one individual's greed to destroy our community. Greed? Rich coming from someone collecting fees for property she didn't own. When they opened for questions, I stood. I'd like to see the recorded easement, giving the HOA right to use my property. As I've explained, that information is proprietary. County records are public. Cordelia, there's no such thing as a proprietary easement. Shuffling papers filled the room as people whispered. I could feel momentum shifting. Do you have legal documentation or not? That's when Cordelia made her biggest mistake. Instead of deflecting, she doubled down. The HOA doesn't need to justify established usage rights to property owners who refuse to be good neighbors. And just like that, she'd admitted it. No legal documentation, no easement, no rights at all. The meeting exploded into chaos. I walked out smiling because I just watched her hang herself with her own rope. What I found next would make Cordelia's adverse possession claim look like a parking ticket compared to federal fraud charges. The certified letter arrived Friday. Thick Expensive paper, law firm letterhead, costing more to mail than most people make hourly. Berkshire Ashton and Associates. The kind of white shoe firm charging $800 an hour to explain why you can't win. Cease and desist. Property interference and harassment. Read the subject line. Sarah was sorting medical bills when I opened it. Fresh coffee mixed with crisp legal paper scent, and I could hear the furnace kicking on as December's cold deepened. "What's that?" she asked, looking up from insurance forms. "Cordelia's lawyer wants me to stop asking for proof of their legal rights." 3 pages of legal intimidation disguised as professional correspondence. Phrases like prescriptive easement through adverse possession and established usage patterns constituting legal ownership filled paragraphs like smoke from a dumpster fire.